Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful July the 30th, 2019. Grondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton sports is getting exciting all over again. Tomorrow is travel day for two NFL teams getting ready for their first kickoff of the preseason. Major League Baseball trade deadline is less than 24 hours away. It's all exciting right now.
Yes, all exciting in the sports universe. A lot of people wondering. It's amazing. People think money changes all things. I know the Bible says money answers all things. But there's a lot of guys that are multi-millionaires, and they don't know where they'll be staying by the end of the week. Big C, that's always strange. Of course, football is great. And just thinking about history repeats itself. What's it about men who are billionaires that keep thinking they can squeeze the little guy and not give him money and still remain on top? I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, there's a movie that I saw a long time ago, and it was about Smokey and the Bandit, Sheriff Buford T. Justice, never forget him, the late Burt Reynolds, Sally Fields, and just a lot of great characters in that movie. But them good old boys, they were running shine. They had that black Pontiac Trans Am. I wish that they would come back out with that car. But instead of trying to do their shine and their libations in liquor stores, they were doing it in the back streets, Big C. They were trying to cheat the system, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in certain beverages, it was against the law to cross interstate lines with them, and that's what that was. It was based on a bet.
Yeah.
Rich guys would do whatever they can to get the enjoyment out of life that they want.
Yeah. So I think Jerry Jones, I would just argue that his favorite character in any movie was Sheriff Buford T. Justice, because with his good old boys from the Cowboys, it goes back to Emmitt Smith. Now you have Ezekiel Elliott. You have Prescott. They're all like the black sheriff that Buford T. rolled up on, and he said, my goodness, what's the world coming to? Jerry doesn't want to pay these guys the honest way, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at this has become an anathema in sports. Is just players are holding out, demanding that they want more money, that they don't want to honor the contract that they signed originally, feeling that contract was justified at the time. I've always been a proponent of that if players are unhappy with their contracts, these long-term contracts that they sign, and you're that good, why don't you just sign a one-year contract at a time? Don't sign 4- and 5-year contracts.
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott really doesn't have a bargaining tool when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. He's still under his rookie contract, which he has 2 years left on it. Realistically, it's not 1 year. He has 2 years left on it.
Yeah.
Dallas has the option to pick up that 5th year of that contract. Then after that, Charlton, you can franchise the player for actually 2 more years where you're stuck for 7 years. Those last 2 years will be in the top 3 paid running backs in the league on the last 2 years of that 7-year deal if Dallas chooses to go that option. But everyone has to understand that's salary cap implications.
Yeah.
You just can't freely throw out the money to everybody because you have to make it fit within the salary cap. Otherwise, the owner is going to be paying a huge fine to the league.
So, to me, in a TV metaphor, I think a lot of the athletes, they're like Burt Reynolds in that black Trans Am and Sally Fields, and he only took his hat off for one thing, and it's like the players now. They know the money's there. Back in the day, players didn't have the power. They didn't have the knowledge. They didn't have the social media pressure. They didn't have a lot of that stuff. But we'll talk about more of that. But I do want to say I love football and the fact that it's here. But I also want to make sure that we share this national hotline number. And it's amazing because the anathema of sharing this national hotline number is for people who are really in trouble. It's a national suicide number. It's also a number for people going through issues. It's crazy. I remember talking to someone today that I work with in the insurance and mortgage business. And she was talking about issues that she's having in her home life. And it doesn't make any sense that people closer to you make life more difficult. But you can call 800-273 8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or if you're a teenager, you're out of school, a lot of kids get bullied. And sometimes, Big C, the parents do not know. Will Smith said sometimes parents don't understand. Well, you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Can you just give your thoughts? If people are in a situation and they want to get out, don't sit there and hope it's going to change. You got to get off the bed of thorns, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, that's in every aspect of life, Charlton. You have to be willing to do some things for yourself. But this National Suicide Hotline was set up years ago, Charlton, and mainly for veterans, people who had no place to turn, who it was hard to find people that identified with what they've gone through in life. We have 19 million veterans in the United States of America, and over 20 veterans commit suicide every day. This is one of the things that the administration won't address when they're sitting there and attacking private citizens. They won't talk about what they're doing to aid our great veterans that have served in many world wars around the world, Charlton, protecting the U.S. sovereignty. But we have over 20 of them committing suicide every day because they haven't been helped. They haven't felt that there was help out there for them. Our national government has turned its back on our great veterans, but this National Suicide Hotline is there for somebody to talk to you. If you just feel that you need a voice and you want an anonymous voice, call somebody. Call this National Suicide Hotline. There's help on the other end of the line. A lot of times, veterans won't reach out because they feel embarrassment because people that they know will think about them as being weak after going and fighting for this country, Charlton. But everybody needs a shoulder to lean on at some time in life. And this National Suicide Hotline is there for everybody, and mainly veterans across this great country.
And it's also for people who are, there's a lot of people kind of trapped in disparity. What do you do? And they can call for help because most people think call 911, but I love the fact you give out this hotline. I want to bring up something that happened also. You know, Baltimore, Maryland is a great city. They lost the Baltimore Colts. Then they got the Baltimore Ravens. They have the Baltimore Orioles. It's a great baseball town, a great sports town. But I know POTUS said something to Elijah Cummings, Representative Elijah Cummings, and he said about the whole city of Baltimore, which is that's the United States of America. He's still the president of Baltimore as well. But he mentioned that it's infectious and that there's a lot of rats and bad problems, bad people, that he would not want to live there. And then you find that his son-in-law makes about $90 million a year, and most of his apartment complexes have had complaints because of rats and feces and other people that are dealing with issues that could also have them call the hotline number. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, the president, and I don't understand why everybody wants to pay attention to his rhetoric. The dog whistles that he constantly throws out is to distract people from the things that he is doing that are pointing a finger at him. I mean, back during the midterm elections, it was all about the brown menace, the infestation of brown people coming across the southern border. And it was imperative that they build a wall, and that wall was going to get built. Mexico was going to pay for it. He needed a national state of emergency. He hasn't built 1 foot of wall down on the southern border, Charlton, after all of that rhetoric. And now he's attacking the great city of Baltimore. Spent a lot of time in Baltimore over the years, one of the most beautiful inner harbors in America, up in the Baltimore region. And when you think about some of the great institutions, many historical black colleges up in that area, Morgan State, Coppin State. You think about Johns Hopkins University, which is right there, Charlton. Great institutions. Georgetown is right down the road. Washington, D.C. is 30 miles away from Baltimore. So when the president wants to talk about a rat-infested, city that people were, terrible plight living in, he's the leader, the commander and leader of the United States. Anything that needs to be done, he can, swipe his Sharpie and get it done. The money he was talking about needing to build a fence on the southern border, since Baltimore is such a terrible American city, why didn't he go in and swipe a pen and clean up Baltimore? Why doesn't he put his pen where his mouth is and do some help in these American cities?
Well, we know the dog whistles to aim at people of color, and oftentimes people of color don't have access to a microphone. On Big C Sports, we do. We're not just going to dumb down and say, Big C, do you know who won the game? I really respect Elijah Cummings, and I hope that everybody can have dialogue. We don't all have to agree to get along. I do want to bring up, we just talked about the hotline. We talked about Baltimore being a great sports city. It's also a great political town, great place to get an education. There's a lot of hardworking people in Baltimore, and they are Americans just as much as Washington, D.C. and New York City, which has I saw the biggest rats when I was in New York. I was at Madison Square Garden, and I was on the subway system in New York City. I kid you not. I was about to get onto a subway and come around the corner. There was a rat that was big as a dog. And see, I didn't get on the subway, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you get that in a lot of Eastern Seaboard cities when you think about places to hide in some of those old cities, when you think about the infrastructure being well over 100 years old and many cracks and crevices for these animals to survive in.
Yeah.
But, this is a national problem. It's not just a Baltimore problem, Charlton, where you have rat-infested areas. It's up and down the entire Eastern Seaboard, especially in fishing ports.
Yeah, it was closer to Trump Tower than it was to Baltimore. I do want to say we're just 2 days away from the start of the NFL preseason. And it's almost like when I know you cook a lot of meat down south. I wonder if you guys leave any more animals to populate DC. But there's a lot of people getting the barbecue grills ready. And it's a pastime. Football, as much as people say it has issues, everything that you care about has issues. People have issues. Life has its own issues. But the Denver Broncos and the Atlanta Falcons on Thursday night at the NFL Hall of Fame game, it's a chance to honor the heroes that made this game what it is. I want to ask you, what does it mean to you, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, being a part of the Hall of Fame for any athlete, Charlton, is to be immortalized forever in that particular sport. And to have this game in Canton, Ohio, which is an annual place for this game to be, it's a shrine to professional football, and this is where football started in Canton, Ohio. And to have all of these teams show up year in and year out, and have the Denver Broncos versus the Atlanta Falcons. One of the things that most of these teams are adding a fifth preseason game, Charlton, so you're not going to get a lot of veteran interaction in this game.
Right.
This is going to be a showcase for first-year players and rookies trying to make the roster. This is what their chance to shine is, Charlton. You got the Denver Broncos. They're trying to search it and find out who's going to be their quarterback. They traded for Joe Flacco. They drafted Drew Lock. And so this is going to be a challenge between those two. I don't see Flacco getting a lot of time. I see Lock getting most of the snaps.
Yeah.
They got a running back situation. They have three running backs that they got to figure out. Phillip Lindsay last year was a second free agent rookie in the history of the NFL to rush for 1,000 yards. Will he keep his position at the starting running back? He had a thumb injury at the end of last year. You look on the flip side at the Atlanta Falcons. You got Julio Jones, who said, I'm not playing one preseason game this year.
Yeah.
He held out last year to get a larger payday from Arthur Blank. Arthur gave him another $3.5 million to come play the regular season.
Something changed.
But this is also about what the players are talking about and the owners are talking about. Why not just go to 18 regular season games?
Well, if you think about going to 18 regular season games, I remember, I think it was last week, you were saying that you would do the Ezekiel Elliott thing and go outside of the country and relax a little bit, and you didn't want to show up because you already knew the playbook. If players want to not show up because they don't need the extra opportunity to get injured, like a lot of players have already happened in preseason, would 18 games force players into being more injured, if that makes any sense, Big C?
Well, part of that rule of talking about 18 games is that you would limit any active player on the roster to only 16 regular season games. So each player would, the starter would get essential 2 games off, basically just like what they get in the preseason.
Yeah.
What this is going to show you, though, is the depth of the roster with the players started intertwining non-starters with starters throughout the season. I think it would be a good thing to reduce the NFL down to 2 regular preseason games. That's something that the Canadian Football League has done. I know they play 2 preseason games, and they play an 18-game regular season schedule.
Yeah.
This is all about money, what it comes down to. We see players holding out, demanding more money. This gives an opportunity for players to make more money when they say they want contract increases, because now you're under an 18-week pay schedule instead of a 16-week pay schedule. So there's going to be an automatic increase of revenue to all the players as well as gate revenue within the league. But this is also part of the next collective bargaining agreement at the end of the 2020 season.
Yeah.
Players need to finally sit down and figure out what they want to do financially, not go out and see how many cars you can buy, how many parties you can throw, how much gold you can put around your neck, and how many cars you can put in your garage.
Mozzarella
But what
cheese.
can you do about your future? How can you position money? as a current player, and even after you retire, and put money away in annuities, that should be part of every player's contract. It should be an automatic annuity attached to that contract from anywhere to 10 to 20% of his yearly salary that will go in 10-year increments every year that he plays in the league.
Yeah, well, you can't tell. You ever try to tell someone who's 21 years old what to do? I'm 21, I'm a man, and now you give them $7 million. That's even more difficult. But thinking of giving people the money, we all want the $100 million. We all want to be wealthy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. Nothing wrong with that. But you believe money doesn't solve all problems. It's been 28 years since the Detroit Lions have won a playoff game. Now, the NFL record second-year head coach Matt Patricia, he'll be able to install the New England's mindset with the Lions. But I want to get your thoughts. I know we want to build up our heroes. We want to build up our athletes. We want to build up people that we see on TV. And we want to tell people, like my Hall of Fame announcer told me, my friend of mine told me, he's in the Golden Circle Award. He says, Charlton, our job is to make people believe that they did not see what they just saw. There's no pressure on Matthew Stafford being a $100 million plus quarterback, and the only playoff game he's been to is the one he's paid for. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the Detroit Lions and the division that they play in a division where your cousin is quarterbacking up in Minnesota. You got Aaron Rodgers with this huge contract in Green Bay, and you got the up-and-coming Mitch Trubisky in Chicago, where they won 12 games, and they don't seem to be taking a step back with the Bears. So it's a tough road for the Detroit Lions, not having played a playoff game in 28 years that they've won, Charlton. That's a long drought in the NFL, and playing in a tough division like that, I know a lot of players are disenchanted with Patricia because they had a losing mentality there in Detroit prior to him showing up. The way that they were operating, they were kind of set back with the style that Matt Patricia brought in. He was trying to bring in that New England mantra and install it in Detroit, but guys were saying we were happy losing and getting paid. Why should we want to win? The pay is the same amount.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, but still, I want to because, as you know, there are players holding out now. And I heard media, and maybe I'm sensitive because I see things, and maybe I'm too sensitive. But when I hear them look at, and this is mainstream media, when they look at black athletes, they even put it in writing, so I know I saw it, and it said players today are full of greed. But they only showed the black athletes. They talked about Gordon with the Chargers. They talked about Ezekiel Elliott. They talked about the athletes that have been proven on the field to get the job done, and they called them greedy. But we have guys like Stafford. Melvin Gordon was in the playoff game last year. Ezekiel Elliott's been to the playoffs, but Stafford hasn't. But I've never heard them look at white guys and say they're greedy and they're trying to hold their teams hostage. Does that make any sense, Big C? Your thoughts?
I mean, if you talk about a perfect line of greed, I mean, look at what Nick Foles did. He paid the Philadelphia Eagles $2 million to get out of his contract.
Yeah.
Because he knew he would get a pay raise by going to Jacksonville.
Yeah.
He made an extra $11 million by going to Jacksonville over what he would have made in Philadelphia. So if that's not greed, I don't know what greed is. Jimmy Garoppolo has that huge contract in San Francisco. They said, well, you got to give it to him because he's a franchise quarterback, even though he's never won anything as a quarterback in the NFL. I mean, you look at what Aaron Rodgers has gotten in Green Bay. He broke the bank, cost the coach a job. They said, well, he's the guy you want with the ball in the last 2 minutes of the game, even though the guy had the ball for the first 58, outscored him.
Yeah.
So, that made him an attraction. I remember when Russell Wilson was demanding his payment. All of a sudden, they said he was holding the Seahawks ransom.
Yep.
Because he was a black guy, all of a sudden he was a criminal.
Yeah.
Asking for the same money that the white quarterbacks were getting.
Yep.
One of the things about the white quarterbacks in the NFL, they don't have to hold out because ownership just pays them.
The money.
If they ask for money, the agent comes in and says, okay, we want a franchise quarterback contract, he gets the money automatically. Look at Carson Wentz. He got a $107 million extension before training camp began. His record as a starter does not equal what Dak Prescott's record as a starter does with the Dallas Cowboys.
No.
But they're saying that Dak Prescott needs to give the Dallas Cowboys a team discount and take less so they can pay other players.
Yeah.
No one said that in Philadelphia. Carson Wentz didn't even have to go public about getting a new contract. They just gave him the money. And so as we look up and down the ledger of how the league and the media looks at players respectively.
Yeah.
The black athlete is always the athlete saying, well, we'll hold him and we'll franchise him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the last time that a white player was franchised, Charlton, and had to hold out for money.
Yeah.
I don't recall it.
No, it's amazing because without Big C Sports, you wouldn't even know it. Many of the other broadcasters, they don't talk about it. Maybe they're afraid, shaking in the boots, or maybe they haven't found their true selves yet. But you can Google what we're saying. We talked to the whole universe. In fact, I had a gentleman from Ireland reach out to me about Big C Sports. They do blocking sleds for NFL and college football and high school football teams. So I told them I'd give them a little shout out. So they do the blocking sleds and thank you for following Big C Sports in Ireland. I think he's gonna send me some whiskey. Big C, I'm not a whiskey drinker. I like more like blended up bananas and strawberries and things of that nature. Would you trade blended up bananas for whiskey, Big C? Am I missing out on something? Your thoughts?
Well, you got to understand, single malt whiskey is very healthy for you, Charlton,
really?
and that's one of the mainstays of Ireland. You look at the grains that they distill this with, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's normally what you find in a cornflake box.
Well, maybe I should start blending my cornflakes. But when we talked about African-American athletes being called greedy, it's amazing to me because I've been told it's a sad dog that won't wag his own tail. When I look at Jerry Jones, and I wish I was a billionaire too. I want to be a billionaire so, bleak and bad. There's a song about that. When you think about what he's sending Ezekiel Elliott through, he did it to Emmitt Smith many, many moons ago. And then he comes on and says, you can win a Super Bowl without guys like Emmitt, without paying the running backs. I want you to just ask me if I'm wrong about this. The most rushing touchdowns in the NFL since 2015. Now, Jerry Jones, I know he follows Big C Sports, but the most rushing touchdowns by a player since 2015, Big C, Ezekiel Elliott has 36, Todd Gurley has 28, Melvin Gordon has 28, and two of those three players, the teams don't want to pay them any money, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Jerry is very stern about what he's doing. I mean, he's sitting there, he's going to play hardball. Jerry has a history of this with running backs. The last running back he ran into the ground was DeMarco Murray.
Yeah.
What he's looking at with Ezekiel Elliott is that he's in a quandary right now. He paid a couple of defensive players during the offseason, had to pay them max contracts. Now he's on the flip side of offense. He has Zach Prescott. He's going to have to take care of Zach soon.
Yeah.
He has Amari Cooper. He's going to have to take care of him soon. He has Ezekiel Elliott. One of the pluses that Jerry Jones has with Ezekiel Elliott is that Jerry Jones went to bat for Ezekiel Elliott when the league was trying to keep him out.
Yeah.
When Ezekiel Elliott was committing things against the contract that he has, conduct detrimental to the league,
right,
Jerry Jones went to bat for him.
Yeah.
And Ezekiel Elliott doesn't remember that. So, I mean, he paid it forward in doing that, keeping him in the league, where he could have suspended him also on top of what the league did.
Yeah.
But he also understands how valuable he is as an asset to his offense. But he also knows that he signed a contract as a rookie.
Yeah.
And this is what all sports are getting to, is that nobody's honoring their contracts. I want to see players get paid. I do. I mean, I wish I'd have been playing 30 years after, I retired, because the money got good.
Yeah.
But where it is right now is that, and I'll always be an advocate of this, players need to sign shorter-term deals.
Yeah.
It's like Kawhi Leonard when he signed with the Clippers. He only signed a 3-year contract.
Yeah.
He could have signed a 5-year contract. He said, no, I'm going to bet on myself for just 3 years. If I can't get it done here in 3 years and I'm not happy, I have the option to move on. When players come out of college and they're wanting this guaranteed money, okay, guarantee me this X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
And this will make me happy. Then all of a sudden, they have to understand that money's going to change over the next couple of years. Every year it does. It goes up.
Yep.
Players change in their value. So why are you disenchanted with the contract you negotiated? It's like when you go in and buy a house for the layman person.
Yeah.
I'm happy with this house payment. Oh, I can get in here for $2,500 a month. Good, I'm happy.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the guy down the street gets a house, and his payment's a little less than yours. And he has a little more house. And you say, wait a minute. He has more house than what I have. Why am I paying more and he has less?
Yeah.
I have less than what he has and I'm paying more.
Yeah.
So that's how it equates in these contract negotiations with all these players. Bet on yourself. Don't bet on the team. Bet on that short-term deal.
Yeah.
When you come out of college, you're not obligated to sign a 5-year contract. You can sign a 1-year deal. You can sign a 2-year deal if you feel you're going to be that good.
Yeah.
But players say, okay, I want the guaranteed money over 5 years. And if I perform, then I want to tear up my contract. But you don't put a clause in that initial contract to say, if I meet these escalators, my contract can automatically be renegotiated. That's all you have to do is put that one sentence in your contract. If I meet these escalators, my contract can be renegotiated. They don't do that.
Yeah.
So I don't hold the owners in negative light. I don't hold the players in negative light. You just need to have better dialogue from day one.
Yeah, it's just like Smoking the Bandit, Burt Reynolds. He wasn't trying to run from Buford T. Justice. He was just trying to get to the good boys that would pay him, Big Z, sometimes under the table. On those three running backs that have the most rushing touchdowns in the NFL since 2015, Ezekiel Elliott, 36, Todd Gurley, 28, Melvin Gordon, 28. We talk about this with quarterbacks all the time. If you have a running back you got to bring into a game, which one, as a defensive player, would you say, my goodness, that guy's more difficult to stop? Would it be Elliott, would it be Gurley, or Gordon as a defensive mindset? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's based on the scheme that you're playing defensively. When you look at the productivity of what all these guys do, not only do they carry the ball, but they catch it out of the backfield equally well.
Yeah.
They're talented, and it's about the schemes. I mean, when you look at what the Los Angeles Rams did last year while Todd Gurley was healthy, you got to say Todd Gurley was the most dangerous.
Yeah.
Ezekiel Elliott ended up winning the rushing title, but Todd Gurley really missed most of the last 4 games of the season.
Yeah.
Gordon missed another 4 games during the regular season himself. The San Diego Chargers offered him another $10 million to come in the training camp for this year. He turned it down because it wasn't satisfactory to what he wanted as an overall package.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you look at him, it's about facing them scheme-wise. We see the touchdowns that Ezekiel Elliott has scored, but he's also touched the ball more than those other running backs.
Yeah, and so you look at the Elliott tour. I know you say San Diego because you love San Diego. I think it's closer to Tijuana than Los Angeles, so I understand. And you like their whiskey and all those other drinks, Big C, because I can understand that. When you look at some of the NFL rushing leaders, and you think about, if you take this chance, my father used to always say, look at the other person's point of view. I know you got yours, but look at the other person's point of view too, and then at least play both sides of the coin. So I understand Jerry Jones and what you said about he came to bat for Ezekiel when Ezekiel was doing some things he should not have done. NFL rushing leaders for Super Bowl champions, because Dallas this year, they keep saying it's our time again. But you think about NFL rushing leaders that play for Super Bowl champions. Go back to 1998, Terrell Davis with the Denver Broncos. And then 1995, 1992, and 1993, it was Emmitt Smith. They were all Cowboys, Big C. And I think Ezekiel's a better running back than Emmitt, but I still think Emmitt had a better line. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, Emmitt had probably the nastiest line in the history of the NFL.
Yeah.
But when you look at those ledgers, Charlton, of those 4 rushing titles, those are the only times that running backs have been on a Super Bowl winning title team.
Yeah.
So that lets you know that it's really not imperative to have a running back to win a Super Bowl title. I mean, ask the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
When was the last time they had an NFL rushing leader on one of those Super Bowl championship teams they had? Philadelphia did not have one.
Yeah.
So they didn't even have a 1,000-yard rusher. So I think it's about the overall team concept when you look at what a team does.
Yeah.
Getting to the Super Bowl. Yes, it's nice to have a ground game. You let your defense get some rest, Charlton. But when the Denver Broncos beat the Carolina Panthers, I mean, Anderson only had 700 yards on the season out there in Super Bowl 50 in San Francisco.
Yeah.
It was about the defense, getting after people. And even in all those Super Bowls that Emmitt Smith, was the NFL rushing leader. Look at what the Dallas defense did in those games.
Yep.
They destroyed their opponents. They destroyed the Buffalo Bills. They destroyed, who else did they play in those Super Bowls?
Oh, they beat the Buffalo Bills. They
I can't
also
remember the rest of their opponents, but I know they destroyed the Buffalo Bills a couple times.
Yeah, the Steelers
in the Super Bowls.
Yeah.
And you look at what the Denver Broncos did to the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
That defense got all over Brett Favre. Everybody was thinking that the Green Bay Packers would repeat.
Right.
But that defense took it to the Green Bay Packers. Running backs, they've gotten to the point where you got to get all the money you can, and I understand that because their careers are brief.
Yep.
And people will write them off. Look at what happened to Le'Veon Bell. He held out. He had to go to another team to hopefully get paid with the New York Jets from the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah.
But teams are going to play hardball with the players, and especially with running backs, because they're constantly recycling that position. Look at the longevity of that position. It just doesn't work any longer. We're not going to see anybody carry the mail as long as Emmitt Smith did.
Right.
Terrell Davis's career was only 7 years in the NFL. 7 short years.
Out of Georgia.
10 years less than Emmitt Smith.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the value of a running back, That's what teams are looking at. If I get 7 years out of you with your rookie contract where it's 5, I can franchise you for 2.
Yep.
That's all I want to give you.
Ironically, you have those 2 great running backs from the SEC, Georgia for Davis and then Florida for Smith. And I just love what we do with sports. I want to come back after we do what's called the Big C pause. And I want to talk to you about some other great running backs in the performances in the Super Bowl. And people may think, well, they were or were not the reason that we got to the Super Bowl, but everybody has their opinion. We're going to come up on the Big C pause, and we'll come back in just a moment, and we hope that you'll come back with us. All right, we are back on Big C Sports after the Big C pause, and I really love what we're doing with Big C Sports. I was just saying just the other day, I was out for a walk just the other weekend, and I was playing with my phone, and I said, Google, play Big C Sports Podcast, and it came up on iHeartRadio Podcast. So you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They even follow us in Ireland. I thank my good friend for letting me know that. You can follow Big C Sports on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. As I said, you can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. If you have a television set, and most people still do, Big C, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. And I really like the app by Alexa. When you say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really thank him for all of the support as we grow Big C Sports throughout the universe. I want to bring up a couple of more players. I know we talk about Gordon. I know we talk about Ezekiel Elliott. But just to kind of trigger your mind, some of the great Super Bowl NFL running backs, not that they always won, but I think none other than Marcus Allen. He also had a very truculent relationship with Al Davis. I think about Terrell Davis. We talked about him. There was also Tony Dorsett. He was very valuable to the Dallas Cowboys, as well as Roger Staubach and Drew Pearson and them good old boys. You know how dominant Emmitt Smith was. Franco Harris, was he the reason that the Steelers won 4 Super Bowls without losing? I know Terry Bradshaw gets the credit, but I want to get your thoughts on those players, and there's a couple more, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, Marcus Allen was a Super Bowl MVP while he was with the Raiders. He actually set a Super Bowl rushing record.
Yep.
And when you think about these players, you know, Franco Harris was very integral, as well as Rocky Bleier was in that Steeler backfield that they had. They had that two-headed monster, 2,000-yard running backs. It was the first time the Super Bowl team ever went to a Super Bowl with 2,000-yard running backs. The Pittsburgh Steelers did that.
Yep.
Tony Dorsett was in a league of his own speed-wise when he came out of the University of Pittsburgh, and he did help propel the Dallas Cowboys to a couple Super Bowl victories under Tom Landry.
Yeah.
There's been some great efforts by running backs in the Super Bowls.
Well, there are some great players. But you think about Thurman Thomas for the Bills, never won a Super Bowl, but I would say I know they had that great defense, and there's always, you know, Jim Kelly as a great quarterback, and we keep wishing for his health, Big C. But Thurman Thomas might be the best running back to go to 4 Super Bowls and not have a Lombardi trophy. I hope that does not diminish what he was as an athlete, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it doesn't diminish what he was. I mean, you think about the legacy of the Buffalo Bills to make it to 4 Super Bowls. No other team has done a feat like that in the history of pro football, and it will never be duplicated in the history of pro football. But you think about all the great running backs. John Riggins was a superstar running back with the Washington Redskins down in Pasadena.
Yeah.
He set a Super Bowl rushing record when they beat the Miami Dolphins at that time. And you think about Timmy Smith,
yep,
who also was the first back to rush for over 200 yards in a Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos for the Washington Redskins. He did not even win the MVP of the game, setting a Super Bowl record of over 200 yards on the ground.
Yeah.
And he never had started a game prior to that.
Yeah, I remember that. Also, you think about Thurman Thomas, I recall the great Chuck Foreman for the Minnesota Vikings. I know they lost the Super Bowl to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, you know, they were always knocking on the door, but could never get it done. But that was Fran Tarkenton's team. But Chuck Foreman and the Purple People Eaters, I think he was ancillary to the Purple People Eaters, but I still think he made that offense work as much as Fran Tarkenton did. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Chuck was a great running back in the Vikings game. He came out of Cornell University there in the Ivy League. It was a dominant runner, Charlton, at his time in the NFL. But, you know, I think about O.J. Anderson, who played with the New York Giants, who came from the St. Louis Cardinals and rekindled his career under Bill Parcells, and he dominated the Buffalo Bills down in Tampa. I mean, the Super Bowl has always been about having a running back that could get the job done at the right time.
Yep.
And when you arrive on the scene, Charlton, there's no bigger stage. Every eye in America is on you. And there's been many running backs that have risen to that occasion.
You think about the greatest show on turf. Was that more Kurt Warner and how he could throw the ball downfield when he had Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce? I really think it was Marshall Faulk because he's the one that could catch the ball out of the backfield. He could also go downfield, running the ball as well as receiving. But he's not considered the reason. They still give it to Kurt Warner, even though Marshall Faulk's a Hall of Famer. And I say Marshall was the most valuable player on that team, even though they had multiple Hall of Famers. Big, so your thoughts?
Well, he was the NFL MVP when he did win a Super Bowl with the Rams, Charlton. He was the most dominant back in the game at that time because he was electrifying in and out of the backfield as a runner and a receiver. There was no matchup that he could not defeat, when he was playing that game. I mean, I think of Corey Dillon also, who played with the New England Patriots and won a Super Bowl, who labored in Cincinnati for a long, long time and came to New England when everybody thought his career was washed up, and he still gained 1,500 yards on the regular season and went out and dominated during a Super Bowl performance.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, of course, in Dallas, I was talking to a friend of mine from Dallas, Fort Worth area today, cover sports, and they provide equipment for NFL and college and high school teams. And we were just talking about Ezekiel and many of those great running backs that you were talking about. With Ezekiel Elliott, the Cowboys are 28-12. Without him, they're 4-4. Their points per game, 24 points per game with him. Without him, they're scoring 20 points a game. With him in the backfield, they average 142 rush yards per game. Without him, 106. And when you think about it, it's amazing how one player can make the difference for a lot of teams. And if you're that one guy that holds out, you would think he has more credibility. I think he's more valuable to Dallas than you have the quarterback Stafford up at Detroit that doesn't know how to get to the playoffs unless they buy a ticket. But it's all fair in love and war. I want to bring you out to the West Coast since we're still talking about football that I love so much. Your friend John Gruden, the TV quarterback guru, has gone on stating that his rookie first-round draft pick, running back Josh Gordon, should be the best rookie running back in the NFL and win Rookie of the Year. Now, we just finished talking about many NFL players that led the league in rushing, many Hall of Famers, many that went on to play in the Super Bowl. What experience does Gruden have with coaching running backs to go to the Super Bowl, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when I look at John Gruden's statement about Gordon, he's an outstanding running back. Well, Jacobs, rather, that came out of Alabama.
Yeah.
But you also got to look at this with Jacobs. He never had a 1,000-yard season while he was at Alabama.
Yeah.
And can he carry the workload with the Oakland Raiders? I mean, he platooned at Alabama, so he never got a chance to get tired. He wasn't a guy who went out there and carried the ball 20 to 25 times a game.
Right.
And when he did carry the ball, Charlton, he was playing against college players. Now you're going to be facing NFL players where you got to come out of the backfield. You got to defeat one-on-one matchups with a linebacker or a strong safety, Charlton.
Yep.
But you got guys that are going to come up and hit you every play. You don't have the dominant offensive line that you had at the University of Alabama. You have the subpar offensive line that the Oakland Raiders have had that sometimes looks like a sieve with defensive linemen running through it.
Yeah.
So Josh Jacobs has high expectations from John Gruden. I mean, he warranted a number one first-round draft pick with the Raiders organization. But I think John Gruden sometimes is blowing some smoke from out there in California, and, not from the wildfires.
Yeah.
But, to put that type of, on this young man to say that he was the best running back in the draft, Charlton, even though he's a first-round draft pick, I think he might end up fifth in all rookie rushes this year in the NFL.
Give me your thoughts on something. I heard there is, I think Greg Papa, former play-by-play radio broadcaster for the Oakland Raiders. I remember I spotted a couple of games for Greg Papa when he was doing college football down at Stanford back in the mid-'90s. And I thought he was excellent then. And then he moved on to do many things from broadcasting high school football, college football, and NFL as the Raiders play-by-play broadcast. And I thought he was the best I'd heard. I know everybody has their own favorites around the country. And now you have Brent Musburger doing Raider play-by-play on radio. And everybody, there's a Hall of Fame guys, no matter who it is. But I don't think Brent Musburger can hold Greg Papa's. I just don't think he can hold up to him. He's not the same. He doesn't have the same energy. But how do you criticize the Hall of Fame? It's not criticism, just other things I've heard. But when you look at, there was also, I think his name was King, I believe, that was doing way back in the day broadcast for the Raiders, Hall of Famer. Now, when these players and these same broadcasters have seen what Al Davis built, I want to get your and they may never say it publicly like you do, but what do they think of what Gruden has done? Because they've seen guys like Art Shell, they've seen guys like Al Davis, and guys that have built winning teams. What would they think of Gruden that they don't have the guts to come out and say publicly, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charles, you have to understand that all broadcasters on television and 99% of them on radio are there because of a paycheck.
Yeah.
They have a production manager that's going to script what they say on the air and even off the air. They have a contract that says what they can and cannot say because they're contracted with the league.
Yeah.
I think everybody in a closed-door session looks at reality as far as what's not there. There's been some broadcasters speak in kind of John Gruden and his actions with the Raiders, being minimally critical of what he has done and how he has coached the team.
Yeah.
I think this year, Charlton, that the gloves will come off with a lot of people with the Raiders if they're not productive. If they don't go out there and win at least 8 games, I think the criticism now is going to have to come from all broadcast spectrums about John Gruden and even Mark Davis about what they're not accomplishing with that once proud organization.
He has a losing record without Tony Dungy's players, and I know there's a lot of coaches that have gotten the axe when they had winning records, and that's, Caldwell out of Detroit. It just goes on and on. I wish the Raiders will, but when you hear people talking in the backdrop, they just feel that Gruden got the $100 million, and who wouldn't take the $100 million? Whether you win or lose on the field, he's going to win at the bank. We talked about the running backs position. You think about, and I want to get your thoughts on it, and I know you don't like running backs because you thought that when you played they were tougher and faster, but Saquon Barkley is amazing. Alvin Kamara, you look at Todd Gurley. In the last 4 NFL Rookies of the Year and also Prescott, these players are young, got a bright future. But I just want to get your thoughts on where do you think they stand compared to some of the Hall of Famers we just mentioned, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when healthy, all of these players have been productive. I mean, you think about what Todd Gurley had done with the Rams prior to this knee injury that he has had. He came into the league. He was Rookie of the Year with the Rams when they were in St. Louis.
Yeah.
He showed a lot of promise in what his NFL career would be. He got that huge contract 2 years ago. Last year, he suffered a knee injury that slowed him down. We see where Ezekiel Elliott has been as far as leading the league in touchdowns on the ground over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
But he has to make his on-the-field actions cover for his off-the-field actions. I think he would be in a much better light contract negotiation-wise if he had not been suspended by the NFL for his conduct detrimental to the league and the team.
Yeah.
So he has to look at the overall spectrum of that. And so that's a big part of what you're looking at. And this is what John Gruden is expecting. He wants Josh Jacobs to be like Todd Gurley, like an Ezekiel Elliott on the field. That's what he's announcing, that he's going to be in that caliber of player. And I think it's a long road for him to get there. He doesn't have the offensive line in front of him. But those two players, when you think about it, of Elliott and Gurley,
yeah,
they have offensive lines. The Rams have built an offensive line, and the Cowboys have built an offensive line to protect those guys and open gaping holes.
Yeah.
The one thing about Ezekiel Elliott and his holdout, up until the day, the Dallas Cowboys running backs, all the backups combined, had only rushed for 16 yards in their NFL career.
Wow.
16 yards. Ezekiel Elliott was going to get that on any long run that he had. They signed Alfred Morris today in Dallas to hopefully give them a veteran backup presence, but they have no running backs that are going to put a threat on any defense. So all the pressure will be on Dak Prescott if Ezekiel Elliott is not there at the start of the season.
Oh, I doubt if we're going to see another Emmitt Smith holdout and Jerry Jones waits till week 3 to give the guy the money. You have a lot of money, and if you're a billionaire, you live longer than you're going to live. Why not be everything you can be if you really want the Dallas Cowboys fan base that comes from all over the world? In fact, they come from all over the universe. This is the chance for them to get into a Super Bowl. It really is wide open if you pay people who can get you there, but that's his money. I can't tell a man how to spend his money. I want to also look at their division and think about it. And you said it earlier, which is always is flummoxing to me when Carson Wentz is treated like he's a guy that's been to the playoffs in 3 years and has the second win in his record in the NFL since he's been in the league. That would be Prescott, but Wentz is treated that way up in Philadelphia. Carson Wentz entering his 4th season as an NFL starter. Think about this guy. He hasn't played a game in the month of January during his career. And yet the Eagles have taken 2 trips as a team into January and won Super Bowl. They've done it without him. But they treat Carson Wentz as if they did it with him. I know it's a black-white thing, and people say, oh, don't go with the race thing. But last I checked, one guy was white, hasn't won a playoff game, and they treat him like they love him. Hasn't even gotten them to the playoffs, hasn't played in one. But Prescott has, and he's African-American. And he makes chump change compared to what Wentz is getting. That's just, you can Google that. Give me a feeling on why Carson's treated like he's the paragon of virtue, and they really have nothing to show for it when it comes to winning, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, is what the NFL has always been as the quarterback position. It's the skin game. You think about the value of a Dak Prescott to the Dallas Cowboys, the most notable, wealthiest franchise in the NFL, according to Forbes. Dak Prescott basically saved the Dallas Cowboys. They were in a doldrum.
Yep.
They were going on the downhill slide with Tony Romo at quarterback. Tony couldn't stay healthy. He couldn't hold the ball on extra points or field goals.
Right.
You know, he was losing it. Dak Prescott came in a 4th-round draft pick. Tony got hurt right away. Dak Prescott propelled this team to a 13-win season.
That's right.
All the pressure in the world was on this young man. He didn't fold.
No.
That same season, Carson Wentz had 5 or 6 wins with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
He was the 2nd pick in the draft. He had a better year than Carson Wentz and Jared Goff, who both of those teams have been in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But Carson Wentz has not played up to the caliber of Dak Prescott. Everybody says, well, he's done all the heavy lifting in Philadelphia. Well,
right.
He hasn't lifted them to a playoff win yet.
No.
At least Dak Prescott has a playoff win under his belt in Dallas.
Yeah.
And he's not getting the credit for it. I keep trying to figure out why the media says he's not valuable and he's not a franchise quarterback. Every quarterback with a record like his gets a franchise contract.
Yeah.
Ask Matthew Stafford, who's won the most games over the last 3 years. Ask Derek Carr, who has won the most games over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Ask Matt Ryan, who has won the most games over the last 3 years. Ask Aaron Rodgers,
Yeah.
who has won the most games over the last 3 years. So when you want to go out there and say the guy is not a franchise quarterback and the record doesn't mean anything in the NFL, I guess then you can't afford to pay a guy with a losing record like your cousin in Minnesota who has never beaten a team over 500 in his career.
Well, he's not my cousin. But you were saying ask those players, but they can also Google it. They can just Google it and they'll find out the answers for themselves. I know it's a great position. It's every young football player's dream to play pro football. If you look at the 11 NFL receivers, and they've had over 100 receptions, the last season's only 4 made the playoffs. You look at Michael Thomas, he had 125 catches. That's a lot of catches. You have Zach Ertz, 116. DeAndre Hopkins, he had 115. Big C, give me your thoughts on those big 3.
Well, Charlton, when you think about those guys are very integral in their team's offense. I know Michael Thomas has been holding out in New Orleans trying to get a new contract, wanted to become the highest paid receiver in the NFL based on his production. He has the highest receptions of any first 3-year receiver in the NFL. He and Ezekiel Elliott are in the same mindset. Pay me now for the production that I've already given you.
Yeah.
You think about the numbers that Zach Ertz put up in Philadelphia last year, Charlton, a tight end with 116 receptions.
Yep.
Just unheard of numbers, unrealistic. You expect that from a wideout, but he did it from the tight end position. Not only that, he has a Super Bowl win from 2 years ago with the Philadelphia Eagles, and his wife has a World Cup win in women's soccer this year over in France this summer. So, you talk about a championship family, which one will be the next one up? And DeAndre Hopkins just, he goes under the radar all the time in Houston. I mean, he's one of the top 3 receivers in the NFL. And no one, accounts for him. Everybody says Beckham, they say Brown.
Yeah.
But look at him. He was the 3rd leading receiver in the NFL last year.
Nah, he's amazing. And then your friend, Julio, remember when he lost his earring when he was swimming in a lake down in Alabama? I guess they don't have swimming pools in Alabama, but they still go to the lake, and he couldn't find his earring. I think it was a $5,000 earring, and men can wear earrings if that's how they get down. But I think the reward was $150,000 for a $5,000 earring. Did anyone ever return it? Mixing your thoughts? Or was it vice versa, your thoughts?
Well, nobody's going to return Julio's earring, but Julio went out and bought a bigger boat this time, so in case he drops his earring, the earring will fall on the boat, and that's where he's hanging out on this weekend. He's not going to Canton. He's going to be hanging out on his boat.
On his boat, yep. Adam Thielen, you had 113 catches for him. Julio 113. Devontae Adams 111. I remember him as played the state championship football game in California, Palo Alto High School, down there on the farm. But he didn't get the chance to play at Palo Alto down at Stanford. He went to Fresno State. But Adams, Big C, is he going to lose Aaron Rodgers this year, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, he's Aaron Rodgers' go-to guy. You got to realize they lost Randall Cobb. Randall Cobb left the Packers and ended up with the Cowboys to help bolster that passing attack out there. So he's going to have to be the go-to guy, and Aaron is going to have to find a secondary receiver to help him out.
111 catches can help a lot of people out. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think he's turning that bicycle for a car. The great receiver out of USC, 111 catches. And then you look at Christian McCaffrey, 107 catches. His father also played in the NFL. Antonio Brown, 104 catches. You look at Travis Kelce, 103. And then Stephon Diggs, who may always have etched in his mind that big catch he had in the playoffs when they beat up on, or they slipped by, as you talk about butter, they slipped by the New Orleans Saints. But those players from 102 for Diggs, 103 for Kelce, 104 for Antonio Brown, McCaffrey 107, and Schuster 111. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about McCaffrey, he's an enigma in that whole group because he's a running back.
Yeah.
And to have a running back to have well over 100 catches in an NFL season, that means he's an integral part of that Carolina offense.
Yeah.
You know, if he could have gotten to that 1,000-yard reception, then he would have joined a couple of 49er running backs in having 1,000 yards rushing and receiving during a regular season.
Yep.
But when you talk about that, we talk about how this has become a pass-happy league, and only 3 of those 11 players that you named made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you got teams that are putting up pinball numbers, but they're not equating to wins to make the team get into the playoffs.
Yeah, and we love football. That's why we like to give it so much emphasis. I even know preachers that cut church service short on Sunday. They will even forego getting the third tithe, Big C, so they can go watch kickoff. That make any sense down south, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you think about the NFL. The NFL, I mean, God used to have Sunday. Now the NFL is putting a down payment on it and is taking control of that house.
If Jesus Christ was a football player, what position would he play? Now, we know he was black, so they wouldn't let him play quarterback, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I think he would have been a wide receiver because he had the open arms, for everybody, Charlton.
With open arms for everybody. And speaking of open arms, I think that would be amazing if Price played football. Everybody prays before games. Why not give Price a chance? The top 10 under the most pressure to win in college football. You think about Ohio State. They've replaced Urban Meyer with Ryan Day. And they have replaced Dwayne Haskins with Justin Fields. But I might be the only oddball saying this, Big C. When Day was coaching, when Urban Meyer was on that suspension thing they called it, for whatever reason, hiding that a woman was being verbally abused and physically abused by one of his coaches on the staff, they're both Caucasian. And the system let him off the hook. I know people talk about Hunt and what's going on with his son. Think about it. People gave Urban Meyer the benefit of the doubt. And then Hunt, they're saying, well, maybe he doesn't deserve the benefit. Same thing. They put their hands on somebody else, and they covered it up. But I still think, if you look at Ohio State, they have a coach who's more go for the gusto, not trying to be a pound down your throat type of coach. I think they may have a better season this year. Your thoughts?
Well, he's going to have another first-year quarterback. You got to realize Dwayne Haskins was a first-year quarterback under Ryan Day, so everything that he was executing was under Ryan Day's tutelage.
Yeah.
Now he has Justin Fields coming in, who's going to be a first-year starter at Ohio State also. And he's more athletic than what he just had with Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah.
He has Dobbins, a second-year running back, who's going to be a big help. It's just going to be how healthy that receiving core and offensive line is for Ohio State. They always have great athletes. They get the cream of the crop, and they have a quarterback who can pull the trigger for them.
Yeah, I think they have. They're most likely, if they win the Big Ten, they'll be in the 4-game BCS College Football Championship Series. But I think they have more chance this year to score more points. They're not just going to be as conservative offensively. When you think about, before we get into baseball, Under Armour, and there's so many sports companies out there, Under Armour, their stocks are down in 2019. They were trying to compete with Nike. They signed Steph Curry to that, I think, as a $200 million deal or whatever it was. And there's the belief that Curry was supposed to sign with Nike. But someone dropped the ball at Nike, and they proposed to Steph Curry with a Nike platform, I guess, letterhead. I hear it was something of that nature. And that's the reason he went with Under Armour. They didn't give him that extra attention that you guys give to your patrons who spend more money with those brown drinks you guys serve down South Big C. And now the stocks, and they don't sell as much to women. I think the solution, if they had the Big C shoe, do you think the Big C shoe would sell better than the Under Armour garments? And if it did, what would be the selling point for the Big C shoe? Because of your thoughts.
Well, you got to look at when you're marketing, Charlton, you got to have the apparel. What's the apparel that everybody wants to be seen in? And that's the reason why Nike has stayed on top of the market.
Yep.
And most people don't realize the reason why Nike is so big is that they have the sports teams, Charlton. They dress the NFL, the number one show in the United States,
Yep.
the NFL. The Nike dresses them. So you're seeing in Nike apparel everywhere. All the NFL apparel is by Nike.
Yep.
So Nike has a toehold not just in football, but they have it in basketball. When you think about college basketball, they dress most of the college teams.
Yeah.
So when you look at Under Armour, it's like when Reebok came along back in the 80s, Charlton. They were an upstart company trying to get some name players. They had Allen Iverson, an all-star player at that time who was a guard. But when you have majority of all professional athletes, Charlton, in all the major sports, whether it's baseball, hockey, basketball, football, that's what keeps your market share where it is, and that's why Nike will always own the apparel market.
Yeah, they've done a good job marketing, and I love what they're doing, and I love Big C Sports, and just like with Nike, just do it. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, and iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports by saying Google, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll see the show come up. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. If you have a television set in your home, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. I really love the app called Alexa. You say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast, and you'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show, and then you'll hear Big C, and he'll do his thing. I just want to thank all of our sponsors for all their support, and especially my friend over in Ireland that wanted to send me some brown libation, Big C. I want to just close out today's show talking about some Major League Baseball, because baseball is still, tomorrow's a nervous day for a lot of people. Will they have to pack up and leave, or will they be able to stay where they are? And even though you have a lot of money, you can't control where you live at times, and that's the role of an athlete. Tonight's schedule: Atlanta at Washington, Arizona at New York Yankees, San Francisco at Philadelphia. And wouldn't it be amazing when you have Bryce Harper and you have Madison Bumgarner, and we know Harper changed jerseys this year. Could Madison find out while he's in Philadelphia that he may be going to the Phillies? Who knows? I hope he stays in San Francisco. Would that be anathema to everything is done for the Giants? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is what professional sports is, especially baseball at the trade deadline, is that teams are always looking for starting pitching and they're looking for relief pitching. Madison Bumgarner has to be on the top of the heap. I mean, the Giants have pulled within 3.5 games of the second wild card position in the National League.
Yeah.
And you wonder if the general manager is going to say, hey, we're going to ride this out, even though it's Bruce Bochy's last year.
Yeah.
We're going to leave this team intact for the next manager that comes along. But it's always interesting this time of the year with less than 24 hours until the trade deadline in Major League Baseball.
It's always interesting. Houston at Cleveland, Tampa Bay at Boston, Minnesota Twins at Miami, Pittsburgh is at Cincinnati. You have Seattle at Texas, the New York Mets, they're at Chicago, the White Sox, Chicago Cubs are at St. Louis. What a great series those two great teams have in the Midwest. Toronto at Kansas City, the LA Dodgers at Colorado. If there's a place to get well, Big C, and the Dodgers, Jensen, I don't know if they can trust them anymore as a closer. They got to find another pitcher, Big C. Your thoughts on the Dodgers?
Well, the Dodgers have not been a red-hot team since the All-Star break. They have struggled during the month of July, Charlton. So they're going to have to regroup and find themselves, and they got to figure out what they're doing as a pitching staff because the hits have not been there either.
Yeah, that's something that I know they'll do down there at Chavez Ravine. You have Detroit at the Los Angeles Angels, Milwaukee at Oakland, and that's a team that's also picking them up and laying them down at Rickey Henderson Field, Big C. I loved how Rickey Henderson, when they asked Rickey what did they think about the game, and he would say, Rickey played a great game as opposed to I played a great game. I love some Rickey Henderson. And then Baltimore at the San Diego Padres, and Machado starting to play like the $300 million they gave him back in the day. I love it all, Big C. We have politics tonight. with the Detroit, in fact, Motown. They're talking about the Democratic candidates and who's stomping to try to beat POTUS. And then you talk about NFL football kicks off on Thursday. Everybody wants my money. Show me the money. That was a great movie back in the day with, who's your friend, Tom Cruise and the agent, Lee Steinberg. They might make the Show Me the Money too, with all the money being thrown around. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, the time is closing in and it's very near. Today, we're officially 25 days away from the opening kickoff of the college football season in 2019. University of Florida versus University of Miami down in Orlando.
Well, down in Orlando is great for a lot of things, especially humidity. If you can take a shower in Orlando, when you go outside, you feel like you didn't do it at all. But you can take a shower every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.